in a quiet village in Africa where the sun rose early and the birds sang loudly in the trees. There lived a small boy named Kofi. He was only 8 years old, with big brown eyes and short curly hair. Every morning he walked barefoot to school, carrying a small bag made from cloth. K's school was a simple building made of mud bricks and a tin roof. But it was a place where children could laugh, learn, not forget their worries at least for a while. Kofi was a quiet child. He did not talk much like the other boys. He did not run or play loudly in the fields after class. Oh, but he always listened carefully. He always finished his homework, and his teachers liked him for that. Still, there was something in his eyes that looked older than his age. Something deep. Something sad. His teacher, Madame Akaswa, often noticed the look in his eyes, but she didn't know how to ask about it. She had seen many children like him, children who smiled on the outside, but inside, they carried heavy things that no one else could see. She believed in teaching with love, and she always told stories to start the day, folk tales, some funny, some wise, some with hidden meanings. The children loved them. One morning, after telling a story about a lion who found his roar again after being silent for years, Madame Akaswa gave the children paper and crayons. "Draw your home," she said gently. "Draw your family. Draw what you see or what you dream." Most children began to laugh and talk as they started coloring. There were houses with mango trees, goats in the yard, mothers cooking stew, and siblings dancing under the stars. Bright colors, happy scenes. But Kofi sat quietly. He held his black crayon tightly. Then slowly he began to draw. His head was low. His hands were careful. He did not use many colors, just black, red, and gray. Madame Akaswa walked around the class, smiling at the drawings, praising the children. But when she reached Kofi's desk, she stopped. Her smile faded. Kofi had drawn a small child in a tiny room with no windows. The child had a sad face, and there were red marks on his arms and legs. Behind the child stood a tall man with angry eyes. He held a stick in one hand and a bottle in the other. Beside the man was a woman with tears running down her cheeks. At the top of the drawing, in small, shaky letters, Kofi had written just one word: help. Madame Akaswa felt her chest tighten. Her hands began to shake just a little. She looked at Kofi. He was not crying. He was not afraid. He was simply sitting still, as if this drawing was normal for him, as if this pain had lived with him for a long time. She knelt beside him and spoke in a soft voice. "Kofi, can you tell me about your drawing?" Kofi didn't look up. He simply said, "It's my house." She nodded, trying not to show her fear and the people. He pointed at the small child. "That's me." Then he pointed at the man. "That's Baba." His voice grew lower. "When he drinks, he beats us. Mama cries, I hide." There was silence. Only the sound of crayons scratching on paper from the other children. Madame Akaswa placed a gentle hand on Kofi's shoulder. "Thank you for sharing," she whispered. She stood up, walked to her desk, and called the headmaster. Her voice was quiet but serious. The headmaster came quickly, saw the drawing, and his face grew pale. "We must call the police," he said at once. The police arrived an hour later, not in loud sirens, but quietly, respectfully. This was a small village. People knew each other. They did not want to make Kofi feel afraid. A woman officer, kind and patient, sat with Kofi under the mango tree behind the school. "Can you tell me what happens at home?" she asked softly. Kofi looked down at the dirt, drawing circles with his toes. "When Baba drinks, he gets angry. He shouts. He beats me with the stick. He hits Mama too. Sometimes we don't eat. I sleep in the corner with my hands over my ears." The officer nodded slowly. "Does anyone help you?" Kofi shook his head. "No one knows. We don't talk about it. Mama says to stay quiet. She says if we talk, it gets worse." The woman gently took Kofi's hand. "You are very brave. You did something very important today. That drawing, Kofi, spoke for you." That evening, the police went to Kofi's home. They found his father drunk and angry. His mother was frightened and bruised. The house was dark and broken. The officers took Kofi and his mother away, not to jail, but to a safe place in the town, where they could rest, eat, and be protected. Madame Akaswa stayed at school late that night. She sat at her desk, staring at Kofi's drawing. She had seen many drawings over the years, flowers, animals, families, but this one was different. This one had saved a life. She thought of the lion from her morning story, the one who found his roar again. Maybe Kofi was like that lion. Maybe that drawing was his roar. And somewhere, in the safe shelter where the wind blew softly and the night was peaceful, Kofi slept under a warm blanket, holding his mother's hand and dreaming, not of fear, but of hope. In African folk tales, they say even the smallest drum can be heard across the forest when it beats with truth. And sometimes, a whisper from a child can shake the silence of an entire village. Kofi's drawing had done that. The small boy who once sat quietly in the back of the class had made the village see what was hidden in plain sight. Through lines and colors, he had spoken louder than words. He had shown pain, fear, and a cry for help. And now that drawing had opened a door to a new life. The next morning, Kofi woke up in a clean bed with soft white sheets. The shelter where he and his mother were taken was warm and calm. He could hear birds outside the window and smell bread in the air. His mother, Emma, sat beside him. Her eyes still looked tired, but for the first time in a long while, they were not full of fear. She held his hand and whispered, "You were brave, my son. You saved us." Later that day, social workers came to speak with them. They were kind and gentle. They spoke to Kofi like he mattered, asking him how he felt, what he liked, what he dreamed of. Kofi told them he liked drawing, stories, and school. He said he wanted to be a teacher one day like Madame Akaswa. The workers smiled and nodded. They promised to help him. They said his father had been arrested and would not hurt them again. They told Emma that she would receive help to start a new life far away from fear. Meanwhile, back in the village, the news of Kofi's story spread quietly but deeply. People began to look at their own homes, their own neighbors. Teachers began to pay closer attention to children's drawings, their silences, their tired eyes. Madame Akaswa became a voice for change. She spoke at meetings. She told Kofi's story not with his name, but with care. "There are many Kofis," she said, "but not all of them draw their pain. We must listen even when there are no words." Weeks passed. Kofi started attending a new school in the town where the shelter was. This school had more books, more pencils, and a small art room. At first he was quiet, just like before. But one day the teacher told a folktale about a turtle who hid in his shell for years, afraid of the world. The turtle only came out when he saw a flower bloom beside him, soft and gentle. Kofi smiled at that story. After class, he went to the art room and picked up a pencil. He drew a turtle, then he drew a small flower beside it. And this time he used bright colors, yellow, orange, and blue. The teacher saw the picture and asked him what it meant. Kofi replied softly, "The turtle is me. The flower is hope." It was the beginning of change. His new teacher encouraged him to draw more. His mother started taking sewing classes. Slowly, they found rhythm in their days. Meals became regular. Smiles came more often. Nightmares came less. Kofi began to make friends. He still carried some sadness, but it no longer controlled him. He was healing. One day, Kofi was invited to speak at a children's event at a community center. He wore a clean white shirt and stood nervously in front of a small crowd. He didn't speak much, but he held up his first drawing, the one that saved him. "This drawing was my voice," he said. "When I could not speak, it spoke for me. Now I can talk." But some children still can't. So look, listen, help them. The crowd clapped softly. Some wiped away tears. Others nodded. A reporter who was there wrote about the event. Kofi's story, still keeping his name private, was shared in a small local newspaper. The article said, A boy's drawing broke the silence and saved a life. It reached teachers, parents, and leaders across the country. Soon, schools across the region began using art time, not just for fun, but also as a way to check on children's feelings. Counselors were trained to understand what silent drawings could mean. Kofi's one picture had made big waves, like a small stone thrown into a wide river. But Kofi didn't think of himself as a hero. He just wanted peace. He wanted to be a boy again, to run, laugh, and dream. And slowly he got that chance. Months later, Kofi wrote a short story for class. It was about a lion who had once lost his roar. The lion was scared, hiding in the dark forest. But one day, he met a bird who sang a gentle song. The song reminded the lion of who he was. The lion didn't roar loudly at first. It's just a whisper. But that whisper became a growl. And that growl became a roar again. His teacher smiled as she read it. "You found your roar, Kofi?" He nodded shyly. "Yes, but it started with a whisper on paper." And so, the boy who once drew pain in silence now drew hope and light. His lines were no longer filled with fear, but with dreams. His story, born from sorrow, grew into a lesson, a true African folktale of courage, heart, and the power of port, and the power of a single picture. And like all great folktales, this one ends with a lesson. Even the smallest voice can be heard. Even the quietest child has a story. And sometimes, a crayon in a child's hand is stronger than 1,000 words.